Unmuted. Might help if I unmute it. A lot is going on in the world, and we'll be talking about that and seeing who else pops in and joins in the conversation and all along those lines. But definitely a number of things are happening, and definitely we'll be talking about those on this particular edition of the World Edition. There is no guest scheduled for today, but we'll see if anybody else pops in and joins in the conversation and all along those lines. I see that I've got one of the co-founders of the network, and none other than Nick Palveda joining in the conversation, and also got Shaquille Latimer joining as well. So we'll see what they've got to say, but there are a number of things that are taking place in the world, and we're just getting to some of those items, including that debate that is going on later on today. So there are those four candidates that will be debating, and apparently they'll be trying to gain some traction on former President Donald Trump and seeing if they can get some support. I understand that Nikki Haley is getting some major endorsements from some major donors, and that may be helping her case, but she is still far behind in the whole race and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be Ramaswamy, DeSantis, Christie, and Nikki Haley that'll be in the debate on this evening, coming us from Alabama and all along those lines. And definitely in terms of world news, Saudi Arabia is urging U.S. restraint on the Houthis attack ships in the Red Sea. So U.S. is considering a naval task force in the Red Sea after those attacks. And there are some people that are asking about the role that Iran is playing in this Middle Eastern disturbances and all along those lines. And according to the UK COVID inquiry, Boris Johnson is saying he underestimated the threat from COVID, and definitely there is a apology that he gave, and apparently some of the folks that were hearing the apology were thinking that it wasn't enough of an apology, because there were some folks that were saying that that he wasn't really sorry, and definitely a lot of folks will be going into that conversations as people are thinking about the reaction to the pandemic, both from the UK, from Australia, where I know Shaquille's at, from the United States, and a number of other places. And of course, there are some folks that are fearful that we could be heading back to another crisis. And who knows, there could even be other lockdowns. Even though most politicians are saying that they would restrain from doing that this time around, should there be any intensification in the cases and all along those lines. And there is heavy fighting in Gaza, which is halting most aid delivery. And they are saying that it is leaving civilians with few places to go to and all along those lines. So aid groups are demanding a ceasefire as Israel is intensifying its war. And speaking of which, it looks like Putin has landed in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, for a rare foreign trip. So he was flanked by Russian fighters, and definitely looks like he's going into the Middle East to meet with folks both from the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia on this particular day and all along those lines. And we've been talking a little bit about, Venezuela and what's going on with Guyana. And apparently, Venezuela has raised the stakes in that border dispute and has created a military zone to be carved out of Guyana. So they are ramping up their threat to annex part of Guyana. So Venezuela is even ordering oil drilling in the Guyana run territory. So that is something that folks are paying attention to as well. And we've got another folks that talk about climate change and what's going on with the climate. And there are folks that are saying 2023 is officially the hottest year ever recorded. So that is what folks are saying. And it is about to smash all kinds of records. And they're even saying that, according to the WMO, that 2011 through 2020 was the warmest ever decade. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news. And apparently, Ukraine's tensions at the top are spilling into the open because Zelensky, apparently, according to some sources, is having a weakening Ukrainian army amid the war with Russia. At least that's what some reports are claiming. And Zelensky is barreling into a showdown with his star general amid some of these tensions. So there might be tensions even among the leadership in that area. So definitely that is going on. And like we said before, there are various terrorist groups that are taking part in what's going on in the Middle East. And apparently Hezbollah has blown up a Israel army post. And that is something that is going on as well. So IDF says it's shelling Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after repeated attacks by terrorist groups. So that's just something else that is going on. And the Lebanon army is saying that one soldier was killed in Israeli shelling on their border posts and all along those lines. And apparently a Colombian activist has risked their life to protect the environment as well. So there are a number of things that are taking place in the world. And apparently there's even conversation about how nations are losing a global race to tackle AI's harms, because that's something else that we've been talking about even here in this show and a number of other places. So apparently Europe was set to lead the world on AI regulations, but now they're wondering if leaders can reach a deal. So definitely a lot of people are thinking about AI and its impact on society and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. And apparently there are elections in other parts of the world because the Telangana Congress chief, Revanth Reddy, will be the chief minister in that area. So definitely it looks like he's tracing his journey from political turmoil to now being a leader in that area as well. So definitely there's a number of things that we can talk about in the news and all along those lines. And definitely it'll be interesting to see what folks conversations are and all along that kind of space. And by the way, Albert Fujimori is ordered released from a prison in Peru. So Peru court orders imprisoned the ex-president Fujimori, and then there's a call for an immediate release. So we do have things that are going on in that part of the world as well, because the constitutional court in that country has ordered the release of said former president. So definitely that is something that is going on in Italy, and is the only G7 nation to sign up for China's massive infra plan and all along those lines. So they have pulled out, Italy has, of the China's Belt and Road Initiative. And I think I've even heard Shaquille and others talk about this Belt and Road Initiative. So it'll be interesting to see whether we think that Italy's pulling out will have any sort of impact and all along those lines. There are a number of other stories that I'll probably get to as well, but I'll just turn it over to the panel and see where we go with our conversations and all along those lines. So Shaquille, I know that we've talked before and you've mentioned it before, and I'm not as aware as I probably should be of this Belt and Road Initiative. So if you want to give us some details about that and maybe give some clarity as to what's going on with Italy pulling out, because I believe it was you that I've heard have talking about this in the past.
Problem is he won't, because he's behind the scenes, but we do have some other panelists that have joined us. Dr. Dan Worthington from Utah has joined us. Sasha Starr from Canada. There's Shaquille. He's arrived, and his favorite friend, Jatovi, from the United States of America. We're well represented But there's three topics I'm tired of listening to, and I'm just going to briefly mention them. First of all, artificial intelligence. It's actually been around for a long time. It's way overhyped, and I'm just frankly done with it. Chess computers have been around for a long time. Let's just get over it and move on. Number two, climate change. I like climate change. I live in North Carolina now. It's warmer. I like warm weather. People that don't like warm weather, screw them. Okay, so if they don't like climate change, too bad. I like the warmer weather. I don't like living in an iceberg. Three, Taylor Swift. I'm tired of listening to Taylor Swift. She won People of the Year. Okay, my grandchildren love Taylor Swift, but with the average American not getting $500 in their bank account, 70% of them can't have $500. You can't afford Taylor Swift. Can't afford to go to her concerts. Let's do something very favorable. Watch this. Poof, we got rid of Taylor Swift on the Pod TV network. So until you can say, I have more than $500 in my bank account, I don't want to hear anybody talking about Taylor Swift. So those three items.
You'll be pleased to know that your President Biden referred to Taylor Swift as Britney Spears because he couldn't quite remember the difference between Taylor Swift, Britney Spears, and Beyonce for that matter. He wasn't quite sure.
But it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they're spending $800 each to go to their stupid concert.
Well, I think it's a bargain because I can tell you that the concert that she's doing in Sydney coming up, a friend of mine asked me if I could get tickets for him and his 11-year-old daughter, and 2 extra
they're
tickets.
asking you. Why don't they get their own? Oh, because they're bloody broke, right?
No. He's got far more money than I've got. I just have more access.
He has contacts,
I just have more access to tickets then because the tickets were going to sell out before they went on sale. So I was able to get front row VIP tickets. And it came at the price of some $6,000 for those 4 tickets.
I know. Well, let me tell you something. If you can justify the fact your net worth and the amount of money you're in your bank account is 10 times greater than the ticket, then I don't have any real problem with it. If you don't, then I have a
I do. If you're spending 10% of your net worth on tickets to Taylor Swift, you're doing something wrong.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm surprised, guys. I'm surprised by Taylor Swift and her company wouldn't offer tickets at 0 down payment, 24% annual financing. So any idiot can now go and see Taylor Swift. So they will pay next 3-4 years as this bank loan, but that's not a big deal.
And as a bonus, they can
invest in lottery tickets. That's even worse. I mean, you know, and this is what's wrong with the United States of America. First of all, they have, what is it? This Golden Bachelor. I don't know if you saw it. I've never seen it. I've heard about it. Yeah. It's basically disgusting. We have more disgusting media than any other place. I mean, it is. Dr. Dan, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
The average 70%. It's not like 10%. 70% of Americans in a financial emergency can't get a hold of $500, and they're watching The Golden Bachelor. They really need to rethink what they're doing. They need to go see, was it Sasha over there, and figure out how to make money off their money.
Well, yeah, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that.
Go to the
reason is,
I don't care.
There is one thing what I don't understand about Golden Bachelor, because I saw the 2 or 3
I never
seasons. These women, they are so ugly and so unattractive. So I don't understand. Even the younger men wouldn't react to them in any way. So how is that old Golden Bachelor, whatever he is, how he can react to this ugly women?
That's
I
your
just
only
don't
shot.
understand that.
No, they're just old. They're not ugly.
Really?
Okay, listen. Maybe you are attracted to some of them. So
everyone is beautiful in their own way, Sasha. Come on.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Jacoby? Everyone's beautiful in their own way.
Well, this and The Voice and America's Got Talent. What we should do is have a new show. America is broke. Okay. And then bring on these people who will say, well, you know what? I want to go to Taylor Swift. I don't have
it's all a distraction. It's all a distraction. I mean, all this stuff is a distraction to placate the masses so they're not focused on the issues.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Okay. And let's listen, you know what? Here's the other problem. If they're too bloody stupid, not to go seek out information that will actually help them in their lives, then maybe they deserve this. I don't have $500 in my bank account garbage, in the event of emergency. But at the same time, our media and our educational systems are complicit with it. In other words, hey, we're kind of like okay with it. And it wouldn't be, if there were 5% of the people that had that issue, I wouldn't have a problem at 70%. But now let's look at another stat. 1% of the people in the United States, 10% of people in the United States own 70% of the assets. Okay, why is that? Those are the Taylor Swifts and the Beyoncés of the world. They realize that there are so many suckers out there that they can become extremely rich because these people are idiots, and they'll buy tickets to their concerts and they'll throw their money away. But what they have to do is figure out what garbage will these people throw their money away on and then suck the money in. So now you have a system in the United States where you have really rich people, a lot of them, okay, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, but you can go on and on, Travis Kelce, you can go on to sports figures, even lawyers, doctors that have tons of money, infinite money. And then you have everybody else that's basically broke, and they're totally unaware of the fact they've been duped their entire lives.
Hey, Nick, I got a quick question for you, and then I definitely want to hear about this Belt and Road initiative if Shaquille had any thoughts. But I did have a quick question. This is for everybody here on the panel because I was looking it up because it was something popular that I had played with for a minute because there's all these type of gambling sites, and there was one that was made popular by basketball called TBT, where it was a number of basketball players and other folks that would create a team. It would be a team made up of former pro players, and sometimes I think they were current pro players and college players. And actually, there was a team that won the championship a few years ago that was made up of Golden Eagle alumni, which is my alma mater, and all along those lines. And then they created one, and you'll love this, Shaquille. It's about soccer, and it's a soccer team, so you can create your own soccer team. I looked it up just out of fun, just to see what it would be and everything. And we could create an IBM or Pod TV, as we're now called, team and everything. The entry fee, Shaquille, I'm sure that you and maybe even Dan and Nick can afford this, would be only a mere $40,000. I don't have $40,000 laying around, but if we wanted to create a TBT soccer team, all we would have to do is invest $40,000, and we can have like Lionel Messi and other people playing for us as they are competing in this soccer tournament. I think it's going to be coming up in the winter time and everything. Mark, everybody, y'all got a couple of $1,000 laying around if you want to invest in this TBT team?
Mark, when you play chess, you don't want to be a pawn. You want to be the queen or the king, or you want to be a knight or a bishop. You don't want to be the pawn. If you're playing gambling, you don't want to be the gambler. You want to be the house. Do you know, like, the house wins all the time? Back in Florida, they had highlight, which they had what they call parimutuel betting. I had no clue what that was when I was a kid, but basically after a while you figure it out. What happens is everybody here puts in $100 into the Tilly, and we're going to gamble on something that tomorrow Dan Worthington's shirt's going to be blue. Okay. I, as the house, take 20%. That was the rake, 20%. And then whoever wins gets the pie. But me as the house, I win all the time. Now, when it comes to gambling, there's one position I want to be in, I invest in, if I'm the house. When it comes to protest, no, I won't be a protester. If I can take a case to the Supreme Court, which I did, then
I've shared a document.
I'm not going to be a pawn sitting in some line in Durham with holding a sign. That ain't going to happen. So Taylor Swift. Okay. The person you want to be in this game is Taylor Swift. Okay.
No, the person you want to be is the one charging this sort of money for one.
They don't even know they're playing the game. Look at that. $1,249.
Well, Ticket Tech is making a lot of money.
That's just one ticket in the VIP.
Oh, the Ticketmaster is also a winner in the game. I agree with you, Dr. Dan, because they always get a percentage of all the rate that goes in. Think of it as a game, okay? And if you're playing this game and you're buying the ticket, you're the sucker. Okay, the guy who wins is the house. All right, and if you're going to invest in the house. So no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But if you came to me and said, hey, look, Nick, I got a group who's going to put together a gambling site, and we're going to be the house that takes a percentage off the top, the 40,000, show me where to write the check. I mean, it's not a problem. But if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to be part of the pawns in the game, I'm out. I'm not.
Well, like I said, in the way that the tournament is run, and people,
Can I just make a suggestion? Given that I actually I'm actually involved in the industry, and you have no idea what you're talking about. I can tell you that gamblers do not necessarily lose. It depends on what they are doing, who they are, their experience with the games, and how the games play. That's why I drive a much nicer car than any of the bookmakers that go to the Randwick racetrack.
no, that makes a lot of sense to kill and everything. But like I said,
You're just freaking lucky.
There are people that enter this.
For 20 years, Dan. For 20 years,
you've been lucky.
I've had a winning year every year for 20 years.
You're amazing. You're amazing.
Some of my best friends are professional gamblers in Las Vegas. Okay,
I don't know how you do it.
Some of my best friends are professional gamblers in Las Vegas, and yeah, they can scratch a decent living out. But if you want to be really rich, you're win and you own the house. Okay. Don't tell me about professional gamblers. They're doing well. Don't get me wrong.
You just talked about.
My guys are really good.
You just talked about being a sports book, right? That's what you just said, and I'm saying to you that there are definitely ways of being able to beat the sports book. There's definitely ways of being able to make money.
No, one of my best friends, he disintermediates the sports betting books in Las Vegas. The guy's incredibly smart. Okay, and he'll never reveal his name. He doesn't want any publicity because the thing is, he makes a lot of money doing it. But who makes more? The house. The house always wins.
No, the house wins.
Again, Nick, that's just not true. It's not true. Casinos don't win every day. They don't win every hour. They don't win every month. It's just not true. Money management.
It's like in chess. You're comparing yourself with the top players who are winning the chess game. The guy who has all the money, although he threw it away, is Rex, who owns the house.
Well, no, Shaquille, you've been banned from most of the casinos, and
well, if you're good,
I can't make any comments on that, Dan, on air.
No, hold on a second, just really quickly. We're talking about this and everything. There are people that make money, and this is where I will pull Jacoby in, because it's my understanding that there are some young kids that have made money even off of some gambling opportunities when they have gone in, even being some of the testers of some of the video games, which I know is separate from gambling, but in some ways they are gambling as well. So Jacoby, you want to speak to that? Because I've heard of some young people that are like 15 or 20.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. There's some young people that made money out of gambling by testing video games, which has nothing to do with gambling, but has something to do with gambling. I'm not quite sure how that relates. Could you just repeat that?
I'm just thinking that some of these video game people that are testing the game are doing a form of gambling because they're gambling that they will be successful in what they are doing. I could be incorrect, but if I am incorrect, hopefully Jacoby will correct me. But I'm thinking that is a form of gambling. We're talking about gambling now. So I'm thinking that is a form of gambling. Am I correct, Jacoby? Are they taking a gamble on what they are doing? Jacoby.
He's asleep. He must have stayed up too late playing video games.
Well, I don't know
if you can hear us.
Jacoby, you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Yes,
he's muted, but doesn't matter. Even video games, the guy who wins is the house. The guy who owns Epic Games here in Cary is uber rich. There's no one else no one who plays the games. No one comes close to him. He's the wealthiest person in North Carolina right now. So come on, please do not disparage the house. The house is where you want to be. And if you own the house like this guy does, who owns Epic Games, one of the leading shareholders, he wins big time. Everybody else
now you're doing the same thing you just accused me of doing. You're looking at the very top. How many video game developers have poured sometimes tens of millions of dollars into the development of a game, and it hasn't made money or it's lost money?
Yeah, true. But the successful ones do very, very well. It's just like how many musicians pour lots of their heart.
Yes, you're right. The successful ones make money. That's the logical. That's a logical conclusion of being.
Well, that's like everything. That's like everything.
Right? But your statement, Nick, that if you own the house, you're always going to make money, is belied by the fact that many of the people that own the house lose money. It's only the successful ones. Which is your analogy about chess that you just used a moment ago.
That's correct. You have to be.
It's like all these kids dream of playing NFL football.
If you're the best of the best in the United States, winner take all. You take all the marbles and you leave. And Sasha knows this from chess. The top 10 players in the world take all the money. Everybody else eats peanuts, literally, and hot laser dust.
But here's something about gambling. Okay,
peanuts can be good.
around 15 years ago, I was traveling quite often to Moscow, and I stayed there months and a half at a time. And I was doing about 4, even 3, 4, sometimes 5 trips a year. Now, there at that time, there were a lot of casinos in Moscow, and I was playing there. At the end of the day, I was barred from all casinos in Moscow except one. The only game that I played was blackjack, and in the last casinos that barred me, there was an Englishman, manager of the casino, and he told me, "Look, I don't think that you're suitable for our establishment." I asked him why. See, the problem is that you're coming quite often, several times a week, and you're not winning hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're winning 3,000 here, 5,000 there, 2.5 there, or so on. See, the problem is we have people who are winning $50,000 a night, but they're coming next day and losing $100,000. So we are okay with these customers. With your pattern of play, I don't see how you can lose $50,000 or even $5,000 or even $500. You are winning every single time. Plus, you have incredible food service. You have black caviar, champagne, vodka, beluga, anything what you want. And not only that, you're bringing your friends and they have this fabulous dinners or something. You are incredibly difficult client for us to have. However, here is what I can offer you. For 1 week, you will be allowed to play blackjack, but only with a shuffle machine, no live dealers, a shuffle machine. And you'll see how it goes.
Shuffle
Same
every time.
thing, and after a week, it says, "Sorry, my friend, no more shuffle machine, no more playing blackjack in our establishment. You can play any other game, no blackjack there." Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Sasha,
Can't see what Shaquille is pointing out and everything. But to Dan's point,
that's an
everything-
that's an $11,000 bill for dinner from one of the casino's restaurants. That the casino was, well, first of all, I got a 50% discount off that, so it was actually a $22,000 bill. And then the casino was gracious enough and generous enough to comp the other 11,000. So I was quite happy with that. But very interestingly, the rules in some areas.
$11,000. Shaquille, what do you?
We had some very nice wine, let me tell you. But the rules in Australian casinos are a bit different to what they are elsewhere, and you generally won't get banned for winning too much in casinos here, which I think is a good model. I think that they should make sure that the bookmakers are allowed to do that. I think that there should be regulations over this, because the big corporates have pushed all the small bookmakers out, and then they want to ban winning players. If you want to be a bookmaker, you should be prepared to take a bet. And if what you're going to say is that anybody who shows the potential or the reality of a long-term profit should be banned because it's not good for business, then you shouldn't be in that business in the first place, in my humble opinion.
Hey, to Dan's point that he made earlier, isn't one of the biggest gambles of all, because definitely this is something that I will agree with Dan on and everything, is the notion that you will be a superstar athlete. You earlier, Nick, were talking about the folks like Travis Kelce and a number of others. I can name some of the great quarterbacks that are out there and all along those lines, like Lamar Jackson and a number of others. But that is a very low percentage. I want to say that the figures I've heard is that like less than 1% of the people that are playing sports.
So is getting married, Mark, without a prenuptial to somebody who doesn't have as much money as you. The likelihood of that girl divorcing you, taking at least half, it's normally 60 or 70%, and you're not being able to see the kids and being made out to be the nemesis of the world is really, really high for some reason. So all sorts of things in life are a gamble. Crossing the road against the traffic is a gamble, if you want to put it that way. Going to college and racking up a college debt, a university debt of 100,000 plus because you studied feminist dance and gender studies, and then hope to get a job that they're actually going to pay you enough to recoup that, is a gamble, and one that I would suggest kids don't take.
No, but I mean, even along those lines, there are certain societies that have made a gamble on casinos. Like I said before, I think Dan is part of this community, and all along those lines, as I remember from previous shows, but a number of the Native American population, and I do have some of that bloodline in me, and I do have some cousins that claim more of that bloodline than parts of the other bloodline and everything, and are very active in the powwow culture. But I do know that there are a number of casinos around the country that are Native American owned and all
that's
in
because,
it.
That's because of the sheer idiocy of conservatives in American government that want to sit there and tell you that you can't gamble, and the Indians going, "We have a treaty, come on in," right? Of course they're doing that, as they bloody should, and as the governments of the United States should say, you know what? It's actually not our money. We don't own these people. They should be allowed to do whatever they want to do, okay? And they should just make sure that the bets are fair, that the bookmakers are honoring their potential payouts, etc. But past that, past being an administrative body, the idea that you can't gamble, and then you guys want to tell the rest of us around the world how much freedom and liberty you have. Really? Really? Come on now.
Well, actually, that was a good business. One of my former law partners, what they did is they went around purchasing land for Indian tribes to set up gambling casinos in the middle of wherever. And the state could do nothing about it. And so what happened is, like in the middle of Durham, if the Indian tribe came by and they bought a piece of land, stick up a casino and say, ta-da, we're here because we're a sovereign nation. So
that's the business. That's the business I'd be in. If I was an American, or maybe I don't even have to be an American. What am I thinking? You know, what
do you think?
What are you thinking?
American? It's probably helpful that I'm not American. To be more welcome in there.
Shaquille, did you see the latest U.S. Supreme Court? We're going to wait for the decision. Now, what is quite interesting. By the way, I might want to take advantage of it. You transfer your money offshore. Let's say I send it to you, and you start doing your little tricks, and you start making a lot of money, and which increases my net worth. But because I don't repatriate back in the United States, I don't have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
That is going in front of the Supreme Court right now. It seems to me oral arguments took place. They're leaning towards saying, yeah, that's okay. It's not subpart.
Yeah, it's absolutely okay. It should be okay.
Oh, no,
Donald Trump.
It's different though. They're not stating the case right.
Donald Trump tried to put an end to
They haven't. They're taxing unrealized capital gains.
It's unrealized capital gains.
Let me just Dan. Sorry, let me just come in. So Donald Trump tried to actually put an end to some of this stuff. It was one of the reasons I actually said to you guys before, if I was American, Donald Trump's policies, whilst I think that they are good for America, would have been terrible for me. I had to rush my money out of the United States when Donald Trump became president because it would have cost me shitloads in some of the investments I had at the time because of the changes to the tax rules that he had in relation to the international treatment of taxation. Now, by the way, because of the changes he's made, now it would actually be a very good idea to start another business in the United States as a holding company. But that's besides the point. Unrealized capital gains is one of those really funny, fancy things that you can do when you're overseas because you can enter into, for example, a CFD contract. So if you've got an unrealized capital gain on shares that have gone up dramatically, you can simply sell short those shares by using synthetics or using a CFD if you're not in the United States. And that means that you actually have a net zero position on the shares effectively, but you technically still own the shares, which means you technically still have voting rights. And you can borrow against that position. And now you can bring the money back into the United States, and it's a loan, baby. It's a loan. It's not taxable.
You know, there was actually a company in San Francisco that set up to do all that, and investors put their money in, but then they made one mistake. They said we weren't going to sell the shares, but then they sold the shares. They lied to the investor. The investor got hit with a big capital gains tax.
Well, I can tell you that some of the biggest brokers in the United States... Some of the biggest brokers in the United States, including a couple that I use personally, actually promote this scheme as a way to reduce or legally avoid the taxes.
I think they call it the cash to loan or stock to loan program is what it is. Now the legitimate ones that do it, it's way you get the money out of your positions without having to pay capital gains taxes.
Nick, hold on a second. Quick question. Wasn't there, because you were talking about the policies and even the policies of the Republicans versus the Democrats, but it seems to me that there is a type of gambling, and I can't remember the type that it is, that is popular, and a lot of people go to Virginia to do this type of betting and everything. And they tried to bring it to North Carolina, and unfortunately, some of the Republican folks decided that this was not going to be a good move, and all along those lines with their supermajority. And I'm trying to remember this type of betting that it was, but I do know it was proposed that we have it here in North Carolina, and it was voted down. So now people are still traveling to Virginia and maybe South Carolina and Georgia because they can't.
Well, this is beginning to change in the US, thankfully. But I sort of come back to that share thing. So then, Nick, what you do with the money, because you've now got it in the US, but the interest that you're paying on that loan, right, is also going to be a tax deductible expense against your other income. Yeah. So what you now do is you take that money and throw it into a tax-free municipal bond, which you're actually going to take a slight loss on when it comes to interest payments. But what you receive from that's going to be tax-free. You're going to have, this is not tax advice, go seek professional tax advice. I'm not American and I'm not licensed in America or anywhere else for that matter. But if you do that, you'd effectively bring your tax rate to zero or close to it. And that's absolutely what the wealthy should be trying to do for as long as the United States or any other country does not want to have a fairer and more reasonable tax system that taxes people who are in similar economic positions in similar ways. If it's not going to do that, you cannot possibly blame wealthy people for trying to use these sorts of tricks to avoid their taxes like everybody else is.
Right. But,
except it's a scam.
Of course it is, Dan, but it's even more of a scam when those people that don't want to use these techniques are being asked to hand over, in California, for example, more than 50% of what they've earned. And when they say, hang on a minute, why am I being hit with this while the actors and the production companies for the movies are getting tax breaks on what they're earning, or the big tech guys are getting tax breaks, all these big guys are getting all these tax breaks, I'm not getting any, so I've got to hand over half. Nobody in their right mind would voluntarily do that. So, of course, those people who once they get to a certain level of wealth and income are going to employ lawyers and tax advisors.
Well, yeah, but the California's tax system is a scam too.
How do I, mitigate the liability that I have of more than 50% of my income?
Yeah, I agree.
By the way, I'm glad that y'all mentioned the entertainment world and everything, because it seems to me that strike that had been going on forever finally came to a conclusion. I believe it came to a conclusion yesterday and everything. So it does look like the whole industry of Hollywood may be getting back to work and all along those lines, because I know that I think it was the actors that first ended, and now the screenwriters, I think, have come to a conclusion as well. So they have agreed with the solutions that have been proposed. And I think part of what was going on was people's concerns about something that I mentioned earlier, and I think you alluded to it earlier as well, Nick, which is the impact of AI on Hollywood and all along those lines. But I did hear, I think that was yesterday, that the Hollywood strike and the various strikes, because there was at least two of them that were going on, is over. Again, I think that ended as of yesterday and everything.
The thing is they can use the AI to create people. So if we want a more user-friendly Jatovy, I can just take his image and then I'll just have him talk whatever I want him to say. So they're able to do stuff like that right now.
Yeah.
Right now he's very quiet, which I'm wondering if he's not feeling that.
Maybe that injection of artificial intelligence.
I was actually doing some extra work on the side, because since we got this puppy in the background, I got to be downstairs and I can't be with my computer with 4 different screens. So now I'm stuck with one screen.
I'm going to be right back. And it's not
so
because
I've been in and out of listening to what's going on, and they can actually do the whole AI thing. I mean, with the movies, that's actually what Disney got in trouble for, because in WandaVision, they used AI to create the background characters.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Shaquille. Sasha.
Okay, I want to tell you something extremely interesting, which I will talk about it on a chess show on Saturday. But I want to tell you now what's happening is, of course, who is Grandmaster Nakamura. He's one of the top players in the world.
Yeah, he's on Twitch.
Okay, you know who is Kramnik. Kramnik used to be a world champion, the only man who beat Garry Kasparov. And he was a world champion for a number of years, 6 or 7 years. Now, guess what? Kramnik analyzed very carefully Nakamura's games. Nakamura had recently a streak of winning 45.5 points out of 46 games. So he analyzed these games, how they were played, when they were played, and what he found that it's not only Nakamura, all the top players on chess.com are cheaters, all of them. Why he came to this conclusion? He carefully, painstakingly analyzed that all their top performance games, when they were playing at a level of 3000 L or even they were much more than that, happened in the last rounds of the money tournaments. Now, money tournaments on chess.com, like Title Tuesday and several others, people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We're not talking about small change. It used to be time when even if you win $25, what a great day, what a clever man I am. No, today it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So nobody is against chess players winning hundreds of thousands of dollars, except that they're all cheaters. They're all using computer programs, very strong computer programs, and they're making zero mistakes. That's how you win 45.5 points of 46. Kramnik got very capable law firms that he's going to use to take out, and Kramnik has a lot of financial backing, to take out chess.com, all the chess cheaters, all the Nakamuras, and all the others. And that will be very, very... Oh, by the way, when Kramnik first came with these discoveries, there were threats against him personally and his family. So he's recorded all that, and the lawyers have all the materials ready. So we are for a chess spectacle of a grand scheme. So I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and in case you guys don't know what goes on the internet, a lot of the chess is played on the internet versus somebody. And my son showed me a long time ago how you do it. You have a computer board here. Right next to it is your the guy you're playing. And actually you can interface with it so that they're playing a computer all the time. In other words, it's called cheating. And he showed me how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I'm a neophyte when it comes to computers, but he showed me how to do it. It was real simple. So I was going, this is ridiculous. Why would anybody play a tournament on the internet when it's so easy to cheat? Yet it goes on all the time. Sasha, it was one reason I don't play Title Tuesdays or anything like that, because oddly enough, the chess players are cheating. Yeah, Jatovi.
I had missed the whole beginning conversation, but now I'm back in it. Just to point out, it's good that chess, in terms of the digital world, is going to try and catch up with a lot of the other stuff that goes online, because in gaming itself, there is a lot of cheating that is there, and there are a lot of companies that's, for example, one of the biggest games out there is Call of Duty. Call of Duty in the background, they actually run on your computer an anti-cheat program to try and pick up all the bots, the actual other manipulations that you can do to the actual computer code to actually give you an advantage on the individuals that you play. So a lot of these tournaments that are being run, like even one that I'm running, that I just finished running, that one was in Street Fighter, but you can actually, but the companies like Capcom and all the other big companies, what they utilize are these anti-cheat programs that run in the background to try and stop that. And chess, I don't think has caught up to that. In some of the chess games they may have, but in these tournaments and everything else, because it's an older game, nothing against it, but the technology used on it, I don't think is there, but it is catching up to it. So it'll stop all that stuff that you're talking about, Nick, for the most part. It won't stop all the, it won't stop everything, because nothing stops everything.
I don't think it's going to stop it at all, because most people now are not using bots directly to beat chess online. What they'll do is they use the bots on an offline device and then manually input their moves. And so what we're seeing is that you'll look at some players, and Sasha and I have discussed, Nick as well has discussed a particular player who's been accused of it by the greatest chess players in the world. one of the issues they brought up was the ridiculously high number of 100% accurate moves that he was playing, but that doesn't technically prove he was cheating, although I think most people in the chess world who they don't even have to be at that level will just know that it's highly unlikely that you're going to play 100% accurate Alpha Zero. I'll just quickly say, Sasha, you'd be quite amused that I ran some of my games through the engine to see how accurate I was. And my best game, I had 3 moves that were 100% accurate, and that was a 47-move game. So, you know.
But Shaquille, the only real chess game when there was no cheating whatsoever is when you and I in Toronto played over the board a normal chess set, and we played a real game with a clock, and there was absolutely no cheating, and the cheating was simply impossible. Yeah. Now, what's interesting about
we had a lot of fun, and that's the
and we had a lot of fun. Now, I want to tell you something.
Missing today when people go online is games like that where, you know, I pulled a couple of like really great maneuvers and combinations on you. A couple of them worked. Most of them didn't because you saw what I was trying to do, but it was a good try, right? I tried it. It didn't quite work out. And obviously, because you're a much better player than me, but that's the romance of chess, which I think gets lost when it goes online.
But I want to tell you something else. It's never happened in the United States or anywhere else, but it did happen several years ago in Russia. There was a small online tournament, and first prize was probably $50 or equivalent in rubles, whatever it is. So there was a game. The guy won the game, and he won the first prize. And organizers took it away from him and didn't award him a prize. There was some strange middle game position, very complicated game. And the guy is playing, if you understand, rook a8 to a7. It's a very insignificant move that doesn't change anything in the position. So the guy replies with something else, and he's moving rook a7 to a8. And accordingly, both moves were first line of the strongest computer program of that time. Anyway, so what he did, although it was only $50 first prize, he brought a lawsuit against organizers that he was deprived the first prize, and it was humiliation. It was he had to go to the doctor, and he had a nervous breakdown and all that stuff. So here comes the court. It wasn't settled. I remember the lawsuit. So there's a $50 first prize, and it went all the way to the court.
That's actually, I don't know what happens in Russian courtrooms, but I just would love to imagine 12 jurors in the United States being told that the move was H8, H7, H8.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
The guy says,
Shaquille and Sasha.
What the judge said?
Shaquille and Sasha. 1 second. Just to divert from
let's Sasha finish because I interjected, please.
Mark, it must be extremely important what you want to say, interrupting me. Please go ahead.
I did not know you weren't done, so go ahead and finish.
Thank you very much, Mark.
No problem.
It's very kind of you. I will never forget today's date that you actually allowed me to speak. Thank you, Mark. Now, what's happened here is the lawsuit. The judge very carefully listened to all arguments. Then the judge said that although rook a8 to a7, a next move back to rook a7 to a8, look very suspicious. Furthermore, it's the first line of a computer. But you cannot go and say beyond any reasonable doubts that he made these moves only because he was told so by a computer program. There is a small possibility that he arrived to those two moves by himself. He just said that, okay, I can do this move or that move or that. But rook a8 to a7 is the only move that could keep position intact and actually didn't make it worse than it was at that moment. And same thing happened when he played rook a7 to a8. Or the ruling was that they had to pay him $50 first prize. they have to pay $15,000 in his expenses, like the lawyers and all the others. Then aggravation, $25,000, that he had a nervous breakdown and he's supposed to go to see the doctors or so. It was a total judgment against this stupid Russian. The internet site was $45,000, which all they had to do is to pay him $50 first price, and that would be the end of it. No, they won't.
So you know that I love my king side. So I misheard you before when you said A8. So I might do that next time we play chess, just randomly make a H7, H8 move because I like my king side more than my queen side. Just to see your reaction, see if you see me for it.
Okay, Shaquille and I actually have to tease y'all a little bit and everything because y'all sometimes say some of the issues that I bring up that you think that our audience may not be as interested in everything. And while I love the game of chess and have played the game of chess a number of times, I can tell you that some of my fans on LinkedIn were probably tuned off at this particular part of the conversation. So I'm now going to come to basketball, which is where I was going to go and everything. And Shaquille, you'll love this comment from a famous basketball player because there's this NBA Cup that is going on and everything, and the Milwaukee Bucks defeated the New York Knicks to advance to the semifinals of this in-season tournament. You know who Giannis is. I think I mispronounced his name, but he's the famous Milwaukee player that is from one of the African names. He finished the game with 35 points as well as 10 assists and 8 rebounds during the wins, and he was asked about the prize money that the advanced players will receive, and he seemed surprised that there was money involved in any capacity, and he told TNT's reporter, the rich get richer. So apparently he was surprised that they're actually going to have a tournament, because we were talking about tournaments earlier, and that they're going to make some money off of this tournament and all along those lines. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts about this man who's making money.
The only thought I could give is that he should stick to basketball and forget about economics, because the rich do not get richer. There's no evidence of that occurring. So it's just a ridiculous statement.
Really?
Well, like I said, apparently he's
absolutely.
People do get richer. What are you talking about?
If dynastic wealth actually,
but all my rich friends always get richer. I mean, you know,
if dynastic wealth actually,
gosh, are you kidding
well,
me?
Elon Musk.
We've got it. You're all stunned at the statement. Now let me just explain.
Yeah, we're stunned in that inaccurate
statement. If it was true that dynastic wealth, if it was true that dynastic wealth just keeps increasing over time, then we would not see the Fortune 100 or the top 100 wealthiest people, the top 500 wealthiest people, the top 1,000 wealthiest people in the world, all be people that are within 2 generations of the people that made the money. Okay,
well, that's because
you're not seeing that. You're seeing the wealthy. That may well be true, Dan. That the stupid heirs are pissing the money away. But if that's the case, Dan, then the rich clearly aren't just getting richer, are they? Yeah. The richest people.
Well, they haven't worked with me. I know how to help them.
The richest people in the world today are far wealthier than the richest people in the world before. Okay, what we have seen is the greatest upward mobility of people who were poor just a couple of generations ago, who are now relatively wealthy. So what we're seeing is, yes, there is more wealth contained within that top 1% or top 0.1% or top 10% or whatever metric you want to take. However, it's made up of different people. So the idea that people who are wealthy are just getting wealthier is not always true. It is also the case that many people have made it up into those categories, and they have more when they make it up into those categories.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. When I get there,
I know we only got a few more minutes to go, but apparently this 2-time MVP is currently signed to a 5-year contract worth more than $228.2 million for an average annual value exceeding $45.6 million, and he will earn at least an additional $100,000 by making the semifinals of the NBA Cup. But the former NBA Finals MVP could receive up to $500,000 if the Bucks win this in-season tournament. But hold on a second.
He said get paid less. Then is that? Would you make that suggestion that they should get paid less in order to pay?
No, I'm not making that suggestion. I was actually going to ask you again. Hey,
let me finish my question to you. Let me finish my question to you.
Yes.
Do you think that they should get paid less so that money can be redistributed to everybody who plays basketball at an amateur level and upwards? Because they are technically doing the same amount of work, right? They're doing the same amount of work when they go on the court as what the top person who's earning the top amount is. So shouldn't shouldn't by the theory that seems to come from the left on your side of politics over there, shouldn't they just get paid less in order to redistribute the money to everybody? So it's a much more fairer system.
I would absolutely
Dan, I got a question for you since evidently you're on the left now, because do you agree that the rich keep getting richer? Or do you not agree? Because
Dan is certainly not on the left. He just didn't agree with me on that particular point in question.
Well, okay. Listen, the rich have a greater opportunity to get richer because they have the capital to do it, right?
Right.
They can invest in assets that can appreciate, have capital growth without tax, other kinds of things. So, there is the opportunity, but people being stupid can make stupid decisions and lose their wealth, which they often do in intergenerational wealth situations. So Shaq is right. The experience is shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. That has been a phenomenon that has occurred. Successful dynastic wealth is rare. It requires discipline. It requires family values and a commitment not only to sustaining family wealth, but also philanthropy and other things. And it's an important balance. I mean, you have to be wise to retain your wealth in a way that's reasonable and good for society, right? So, karma is an interesting thing, and it happens, right? As Forrest Gump would say.
Yeah, it definitely happens. I got a question for all you gamblers because I don't know the answer. Hold on a second, because I know we're almost done, but I got a question for all you gamblers because I don't know the answer. But apparently, Guinness, who is going to be turning 30 while he's in Las Vegas for this championship, has said that he always bets on 34 red in roulette. I do not play roulette, so if he's gambling, apparently he's going to bet on 34 red. Is this a good move for him to tell folks what he bets on? And also, is that a good number? I don't know enough about roulette.
It's not going to make any difference whether he tells everybody because the odds don't change, and he's on a single zero roulette table. He has a 1 in 37 chance. On a double zero, he's got a 1 in 38 chance of winning 35 to 1.
Okay. One of the cool things that you didn't even talk about, though, Mark, because you're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo out of Greece, and he is called the Greek Freak. That is his nickname. One of the cool things that he did is that once he made it into the NBA, he brought all of his brothers and his family into the NBA. He actually won a championship with one of his brothers, and his other brother played for the Lakers when they won their championship with LeBron James. So Giannis is actually a really, really, really educated and a really good guy who has done a lot for his family and his community. And he always goes back and plays for the Greek national team because he feels that he needs to play for the place where he was born and raised. But the Greek Freak, or Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Somebody's got to play for Greece.
Sorry. He's a good dude because he helped his family. But when wealthy people want to hand their money down to their children, that they're not good people because they want to do so in a way where not half.
No, it's okay to do that. In fact,
when did anybody say that, Shaq?
You've constantly told me about
nobody said that, but you're just going to make it up to start some type of argument.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly what I said in previous shows.
All I said was Giannis was a good dude for helping his family.
That's all you've said now, but on previous shows you've said.
He also praised LeBron on previous shows. He also praised LeBron for going back to Cleveland in previous shows. I do remember Jacoby praised LeBron for going back to Cleveland and pulling back some of those people.
Dear Lord, I don't know what the argument was. Saying that he's a good guy, I thought we could agree on that, but
no, you can't agree.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good thing. Let
Dan talk, Shaq. You're talking over everybody. Let Dan talk.
No. I think it's important to help people who want to pass on multi-generational wealth to do it in a way that's responsible, both from a financial perspective and a social perspective, so that there's balance and wisdom in the next generation, so that there's an entrenchment of family governance and values and stewardship over that wealth. Because people, that have wealth have a tremendous gift and have a tremendous ability to do good in the world. And that's one of, I think, the responsibilities of people who have wealth, is to do great good. Now they get to decide what that great good is. but it's because that's her choice. But it's all based on a good heart and the golden rule, right, Shaq? I mean, it's important to empower wealth in positive ways, because that's just socially responsible and important to families. It's important to set a role model for the next generation, the children, to teach them responsible ways of managing their money and in being involved in ways that help the community.
I agree with you on that, Dan, except for I would say that I don't think that there's a responsibility to help society. You and I might feel that way, and that's why I get involved in so many charities and so many causes that I care about. And I would certainly hope that if God blesses them with children, that they would continue in that path. But having made money does not all of a sudden obligate somebody to help society. And what does helping society mean? You know, if you leave or bequeath a whole heap of money to the Sierra Club, and you see the executives of the Sierra Club flying around on private jets and paying their executives millions of dollars a year, you might have felt, not knowing that you were doing something socially responsible, but all you've really done is divert away your money and possessions from your children and give it to somebody else. And I'll just also say,
that's exactly right.
Not everybody who is wealthy are very nice people. Not everybody who's wealthy are responsible. A lot of people, drug using, drinking, madmen, okay? And they would probably not be able to hand down any kind of responsibility to their children, so all they've got left that they can really hand down is money. And I don't think it's for society to come in and say, well, you know what, we're going to take half of it. And I think the US should really look at the inheritance tax rules that it has, considering that most other Western countries don't have one. And for a reason. It's an unfair tax.
So I just want to agree with what Dan had stated without first that, Dan, I'm in complete agreement, and I couldn't agree more, that helping out your family, handing down the wealth and teaching the values and teaching those things about the generational wealth and how to improve your lives and how to improve society. And I do think that once you have a platform, that responsibility, you have to realize that responsibility is there. When people start following you, regardless of, you even realizing it, you have, especially having that wealth, be it your family or be it your friends. And that is how we teach society. We used to have that idea or that ideal that we were supposed to believe in, that, it takes a village. Well, even if that village isn't my family, but that village has that same goal, it is teaching that child everything that child needs to know. So we have to realize, once we have that platform, as you stated, that generational wealth, or being a pop star or being a athlete, you're teaching people something. And Sasha, this is why I disagree. When we're on here, we're teaching people stuff. Even when Shaq and I are arguing, Shaq and I are teaching people that we got to argue, which is bad. But we're teaching people things regardless where we are.
Well, okay.
So I agree with that. But the one thing that I'll disagree on the Shaq portion, I think we
just one thing.
Have a responsibility. Well, because you had disagreed saying that we don't have a responsibility. I think we do have.
Well, he does. He believes there is.
And with that responsibility, even with like the Sierra Club, for instance, even just giving money to them isn't being responsible.
That's right.
Holding the Sierra Club accountable for what they are supposed to do with that money is being responsible. Yep. So I'm not.
You're dead. You're dead, Jacoby. How are you going to hold them responsible?
Let me finish, please. I am more of an advocate, even dealing with politicians, even dealing with the charities that I deal with, or even the one that I'm even starting. The fact that being held accountable is more important than anything. Just giving money, saying that you're in, and I'm not saying that you guys are doing this. I am not saying that that's what you do. I'm saying that just giving money to a charity is not being responsible. Holding that charity accountable for what they do with the money that you give them is being more responsible and is that society that we should go through. Because churches, even today, and Mark, we can talk about black churches, how there's always a building fund. That building fund is always there.
We now going down different paths. You don't want us to
I'm not asking Mark a question. If you can listen to my comment.
Right. I'll let you go, buddy. We're past the hour. You just keep going for as long as you want to.
What I'm stating is the fact that we must hold things accountable. And that's why, Dan, with what you said was spot on. That generational wealth, that's why I was saying Giannis is a good person. He's helping out his family and helping out those around him and teaching them better ways, which is exactly what you're talking about. So I completely agree with that.
Did you have something you want to say, Dan, before we get ready to wrap up? And I did have a quick question. And I know it could be a whole nother show, but I did have a quick question for Sasha about one of the other issues I was hoping to get to, but we never got to it because we got into this whole conversation around ethics and gambling and a number of other things. But Dan, did you have a quick statement that you wanted to make as well?
Yeah, the thing is, whether people are charitable or not, or what they want, whatever they want to do is an individual choice. People who are bad people, they deserve to be taxed because they're not willing to be, good about how they handle their wealth. People who got that wealth unrighteously don't deserve it anyway. They should have been prosecuted for whatever they did to get the wealth, because it's stealing from the rest of us in society. There is a social reciprocity. That's why America is one of the most charitable countries in the world. $44 billion, I think, last year. The point is that people are very generous in this country, probably more generous than anywhere else, because we have a tradition of charitable giving and philanthropy in the United States. But again, it is voluntary, and it's amazing that. I think that the federal government should go to a voluntary tax and not a mandatory income tax. Because I think people would still support, but then it would hold the government accountable, because government wouldn't be making all these stupid decisions from a budget standpoint. Yeah, government accountable to the people who are giving them the money is a very good idea. Makes them accountable one-on-one instead of.
They should already be accountable for that now, Dan. And the problem with what you've just said, although I largely agree with you, the problem with what you've just said is that this is the greatest failure of democracy. The majority of people aren't wealthy. And so what the politicians try to do is they try to split a majority. So if you have, and that's why having a constitutional republic was so important, and why America is moving away from those ideals, it's just totally beyond me. Because what you have is 51% of the population voting for the other 49% to pay all the taxes, which is why the bottom 50% of the income earners in the United States don't contribute anything on a net basis in taxes. It's the same reason why the top 10% are paying 90% of the taxes and are then being asked to contribute more, or are then being told that they're doing the wrong thing, that they are somehow leeching and being a parasite off of the working class and everybody else in the country. And it's not true. And it's especially not true when we talk about a globalized world. In a globalized world, the poorest citizens of Western countries are far wealthier and enjoy a far higher standard of living than that's enjoyed or not enjoyed by the poorest people on this planet. So, yeah, look, there is something to be said for social responsibility. And I think that morally, you're absolutely correct. But the idea that it should be legislated that way, and that somehow a majority of people can determine better what should be done with that money than the people that earned it, I think is absolutely folly. And
that's what I said. Eliminate the federal income tax and make it all charitable. So that
I disagree with the voluntary portion.
Jatavi,
I had my hand raised, Shaq.
But you didn't want me to interrupt you if my hand was raised or not. So
you didn't have your hand raised at all, and I was answering his question.
Play by your own rules. Jatavi, you play by your own rules.
Well, anyway, I've said what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
I'm responding to Dan. I haven't finished, so you play by your own rules. Okay?
What?
You play by your own rules. You didn't want me to interrupt you, right? I went backstage for a bit to allow you plenty of time to keep going and going. I haven't finished speaking. So whether you got your hand up or not, I haven't finished yet. So play by your own rules.
I started talking after Dan finished. I didn't start talking on top of you. It was on top of once Dan finished, that's when I started talking. So Shaq, I had my hand raised and I was going after Dan. You guys
Dan was responding to me. So I'm responding back to it.
So we're going to have a conversation between you and Dan, and nobody else can raise their hand.
Isn't it funny again, Jacoby? Why don't you play by your own rules? Because when you sit there
I am playing by the rules.
other people,
I got
and you're having a conversation with somebody,
Shaq,
and somebody else wants to jump in on that conversation,
just answer
you
Dan.
say,
Shaq,
we
just
were having
answer
such a
Dan.
great conversation. You should speak.
Stop.
So why don't you play by the same
Dan.
standards?
I am waiting for you to finish your
Why
answer.
don't you play by the same standards and have the same rules that
He just said that he was waiting for you to answer to Dan. So Shaq answered to Dan, and then we'll say what he was ever saying. And I had a question for Sasha sometime back.
I've asked what I think is a perfectly reasonable question. If Jacoby gets to say to other people when he's
talk to Dan.
That they shouldn't be able to interrupt or have any input into those conversations.
My hand is raised.
We go to the same standard.
I'm waiting for you to finish.
He said he's going by the same standard.
He's not going by the same standard at all. Anyway, look, I'm going to go. I've had my bit of abuse, but Sasha looks amused. I'm going to go. I'll leave you guys to it. Dan, Sasha, you're welcome to interact with Jacoby as much as you'd like, but I personally am off. Have a good night or a good day.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
So, Dan, I just wanted to respond about the voluntary taxes. The only reason I disagree with the voluntary taxes is because of the ideologies that we have across the country, where a lot of people won't volunteer to deposit to, for example, there are a lot of people who are against the military. Our taxes pay a lot for the military. So now we're going to lose out a lot of that money because of the ideology that somebody has against that military. Certain areas across the country would not be able to have roads because, okay, I disagree with my taxes going to Asheboro, North Carolina to pay for this road or the interstate highway. So I don't want my taxes to go to the federal side of the government.
You're missing the point of my argument. The point of the argument is if you make the government do the same kinds of things that charitable organizations have to do to be accountable to its donors, you'd have plenty of support, corporately, private donations, other things, and you'd probably have more support because you're not forcing them to do it. You're not going to have a line item veto. You're going to have a general campaign by the government that solicits charitable support, just like all the other charities have to do. And they have to compete with the other charities for support of whatever the federal government wants to do. Now, that increases accountability and also lessens the chance of fraud, waste, and abuse in the military and other places because of their contracting practices, because now the toilet seats, instead of being $400, end up costing $23.95 at Ace Hardware, right? I mean, so the whole idea is that the government is bloated and unaccountable. And you take the power away from K Street and put it in the hands of the people in America who are very generous and philanthropic anyway. And it makes the government go after and prove up its agenda and for the support of the American people, which they have to do in the votes. But the problem is Congress is always gridlocked. Everything's always messed up and that kind of thing. So anyway, I don't know. It's just an idea.
No. I mean, I think idealistically, that idea, and I understand what you're saying about, okay, check mark, I want my taxes to go here and so on and so forth. But I think the tough part and what I'm trying to look at it as is that, you're giving, a whole litany of things that you want people to think about paying taxes to.
No,
save their money. And as much as they want to be charitable to, for example, they want to be charitable to underserved communities and dealing with the SNAP program and children being children and women being the most on the SNAP or being helped out by the SNAP program.
Well,
but if I can save money,
people
I'm just thinking that Well, what I'm saying is that idealistically, it sounds great, and it's an idea that's been tossed out there for many times, the a la carte idea around taxes. But the tough part that I see from my perspective, and the individuals that I've dealt with, I don't see, the protesters that are out there that make 10 times amount, that make a ton of money, that hate war, are going to put any money to the military or
I don't care.
To police.
Let them vote with their feet. I mean, with their checkbooks.
But what I'm saying is, even
I don't care.
Yeah, I get that. But what I'm saying is, with that a la carte idea, even with more individuals being against war, so now we don't have money.
Either the government is accountable to the people, or it's not. Right now, it's not accountable to the people.
I'm with you on the accountability thing. As I stated, accountability is the biggest thing, and I think the a la carte thing would be counterproductive. However, I think there are other ways that we can go about doing the accountability. We need to honestly. The one thing that I wish that I can agree with, no labels, is the fact that there should be no labels, especially in this day and time. Not in the fact that we should vote for this third party, but in the fact that there should not be an an R by a person's name. They should have to stand on their own ground on the policies and the positions that they're putting forward. Because right now, in those safe blue or those safe red districts, all you have to say is, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and you know what's happening? They're getting voted in. They're not being held accountable.
Well, and I vote straight ticket Republican.
Yeah, so, and that's what I'm saying is that
because I think that most Democrats are morons, and so that's
and that's what I'm saying, because you see that D, you're already voting and saying that they're dumb.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's their policies and their positions that I don't vote for, because I can't. With my ethics and my point of view about how the world works, I can't support Democratic candidates, because they'll go, no matter what they say, and support positions that this administration is supporting and pushing against the American people, that is stripping away our liberty and our freedoms and our rights. I can't support that. It's unconscionable. It's wrong. So let me vote my wallet, and I will be fine with that. There's no accountability. We have manipulation by the media. We have manipulation by K Street. We have manipulation by the big liberal money influencers in the world, Soros and others. And it's just wrong that we have to be manipulated as an American people. We, the people, no longer have a voice in what's happening in government. We're giving more voice to the minority voices than we are to people who are Americans who are working hard and trying to protect our liberty. And you think that's all right. I know, because you're on that side, but I don't think it's all right. I've got to go. It's been
we're getting ready to wrap up the show and everything. I appreciate you coming on, Dan. I'll keep sending you the invitation and everything. But one of the things I was going to say just really quickly is that even there have been cases of Democratic donors that have given money. I said on this show before, there's a notion of I think it was Democratic donors that gave Hill Harper, who is an actor, money because they wanted him to go against Rashida Tlaib and felt that they needed to invest in him. I think it was like $20 million, and he turned that offer down.
I hardly think that political donations is the sort of charity that Dan was referring to. Dan,
no.
I will say to you that although I largely agree with you, I wouldn't agree that the elimination of taxes altogether would be a good idea. I think a vast reduction of it and a flattening off the tax system would be more appropriate, because that way the government can provide some functions that it needs to provide that all countries need. But for the rest of it, yes, I do largely agree with you that people should be able to pay for the things that they think are important. And the argument that's being made by the other side that these low taxes would result in mayhem, if you have a look at the lower tax times of the United States, this was when the big universities were built, the Carnegie Library was built, etc. This was when the most of the charities that exist of any sizable form today in the United States were all formed during a time
when
there was far lower levels of taxation.
What
So
was your-
that obviously is a great counter to the argument that the other side makes, but it also comes back to the people with the money don't get a proportionate say as to how much they're contributing. Their vote isn't worth a certain amount more or less based on how much they're contributing. So they're being required to pay the bill. And people who are not paying anything into the system, the bottom 50%, they're not paying anything into the system, and they get to have an outsized say on how that money works. I'm not sure exactly what the balance should be, but I don't think the system that we currently have is working particularly well. And you only have to look at your peer group to see flatter and broader taxes working much better for the population.
Yeah,
Just
really quickly, I think Jatopi had a question, but just really quickly, are you saying that there are some new foundations that have been existed as well? Because like I said, my mom was the head of the Golden Leaf Foundation, which was the tobacco settlement money, and that was a relatively new foundation. So there have been some new foundations.
But tobacco is tobacco wealth.
Did that counter what I said, Mark? I didn't say that no new foundations or charities exist. I didn't say that.
I was just going to
I was very
say,
specific with what I said.
I think what Mark had pointed out with Hill being funded and to go against Rashida Tlaib, the point was that people are trying to hold Rashida Tlaib accountable, so they're putting money behind a different candidate. So it wasn't the matter of donating
So
the money.
Republicans that are backing different
Shaq, let me
candidates.
finish, please.
Same
Let me
thing,
finish.
do they?
Shaq, let me finish. Let me finish.
And it was a Democratic
So-
donor, by the way.
Yeah,
It's a
so the
Democratic
idea
candidate.
was that
Funding
they were
different.
trying to hold her accountable by having a different Democrat run in her place. So it's basically being primary so they could get a different person in there. So that's what the whole
Thank you.
vote thing.
But
But in
on
terms
behalf
of
of the
the
audience,
Shaq, let me
thank you for
finish,
repeating
please.
all
Shaq,
that.
let me finish, please.
Actually,
Shaq,
They should
Shaq,
have just
Shaq, let me
expelled her
finish,
like
please.
they did someone
Shaq.
else.
So in terms of the higher tax rate, from what I understood in terms of the history, our tax rate started falling after because it was sitting at a 90% tax rate, and then it started dropping. From that point on, Reagan dropped it down really low, and then Reagan had to raise it back up. Dan, am I correct?
I'm talking about.
I'm asking Dan a question.
Why are you
I'm
asking Dan about something that
I'm
I
not
brought up?
asking you, Shaq. I'm asking Dan.
Why are you asking Dan
I'm
about
asking
something that I brought
because
up?
I legitimately asked Dan a question. Why
Why
are you
asking
interrupting?
him about
Can
the
I
topic that
ask
I
Dan
brought
a
up?
question? Shaq.
Income tax rates have been fairly after the Reagan administration. There has been some adjustments, but they've been relatively similar. I mean, between 34 and 37% on the top end. And I am not. I think I don't know if you'd agree with me, Shaq. The problem is the tax shelters, as you've explained, Shaq, are available to the very wealthy, and they're able to manipulate them and not pay an effective tax. The problem with everyday workers, I mean, we say that the everyday worker doesn't contribute to taxes. They actually do, because everyday workers have to pay Social Security tax.
No,
And it's 7% of their income. If you go to a flat tax of 7% on everybody, well, great. No,
but Dan, I think that's changing the goalpost quite significantly. Firstly,
no, it's not.
Well, let me just respond to you. So, firstly, when I referred to a lower, okay, Jatovi, you jump in because you're an economist.
I'm just saying, you just interrupted Dan. I wanted to hear the rest of what he had to say.
Oh, okay.
I'm done. Really, all I made the point is that the poorest people in the world who are working Americans pay Social Security tax and Medicare tax, and so it's around 7%. They can't avoid it. It can't be written off. It's just automatic. It's a taking from their hard-earned wages. The federal government does that, as now the employers match it, right? So they pay it. Anybody self-employed pays both. So it's a taking. Now, if you have write-offs and that kind of thing, and you're self-employed, fine. You don't pay Social Security off on the amount of write-offs that you have. So you have some more flexibility as a self-employed person. But those are basically flat taxes on everyone who has earned income. It's the same is not true of people who don't have earned income. Now they've created the surtax for those who make over $400,000, and there's no Social Security tax on dividends or investment income and that kind of thing. So there's no social net. tax on those kinds of people that make that kind of money. And so, I don't know. I think things need to be fixed. I don't know what I have no opinion about how. Shaq, you probably have more tax policy background than I do. I have a tax degree from Florida.
Let me just respond to a couple of the main points there. So, firstly, I wasn't referring to pre or post Reagan years in the immediate decades around that. I was referring to when all of the great big charitable institutions started up, and that was a long time back in US history when taxes were either non-existent or extremely, extremely low. I think the original taxes in the US were at like 1 or 2%. It was never envisaged that taxes would ever be as high or government would ever be as big as what it is. In fact,
there wasn't a state tax then either.
Exactly. And I would argue that the founding fathers of America tried to create a country where what is happening today would not have ever happened. That the country is not what they would have envisaged and what they wanted to have, in my view. Just in relation to Social Security. So those Social Security contributions, as they like to call them, are supposed to be contributions to what is Social Security insurance, right? It's not technically speaking a tax, but even if it was, okay, two things I'll say about that. Most countries in your peer group, including Australia, has something similar. Australia has a thing called superannuation. Now, the difference between superannuation in Australia and Social Security taxes in the United States is that the superannuation contributions are only made by your employer, but you're allowed to give extra to it. However, your superannuation is controlled by you. What you're seeing in the United States is there's been these vast promises made to people, which the government clearly can't keep because they've mismanaged the money. It's already in a default as far as I am concerned.
They've raided the money.
And that money should have been put into something that people could control. But to even if though I was to agree with you that Social Security is in fact a tax on the working class, the fact of the matter is that my statement was the bottom 50% do not contribute anything in taxes on a net basis, not on a gross basis, but on a net basis, as in the value of the government resources that people in the bottom 50% receive from government far exceeds what they pay. So
probably most cases
who are getting these benefits, who also have the same vote, and I'm not trying to argue for the ending of universal suffrage. That's not what I'm suggesting. But the idea that one group of people can vote for the other group of people to pay more taxes so that they can increase the benefit to them, I think goes against the very founding principles of the United States. And I know there has been case law on these issues in relation to taxes in the United States, but I would argue that treating people differently on a dollar that's been earned based on how it was earned is unconstitutional, in my particular personal view.
Yep, agreed.
I mean, I disagree that that's what's going on. I mean,
is
there?
Well, it is. That's exactly what's going on.
I mean, I didn't even get to say what I was going to say, and you jumped in. You want to say anything else?
Why were you disagreeing?
I mean, I'm disagreeing that as pointed out by Dan, the wealthy have opportunities that many in the impoverished area don't have opportunities to get, or that wealth and that ability to get there. They have that maneuverability to do that. And then adding those taxes,
take the resources they might.
Well, the thing is that, for example, if you have $1 million and I have 5, I'm not going to be able to afford a lawyer. If I get in trouble, you can. I'm not going to be able to.
I mean, but I earned $1 million, you didn't.
And even if I did, because for example, a hardworking social worker is never going to earn the millions and billions of dollars.
No,
it's a different field. You've made that argument.
It is a different field, but that's the point. Is that
the person who's in social work.
Wait. Let me finish. So that is the exact point. And even if we'll say 30,000. We'll say an average teacher salary right now is about $30,000 to $40,000, and that average teacher is working her tail off or his tail off. And no matter how hard they try, they're still going to end up with 2 and 3 jobs. So being able to help out that teacher and giving that teacher, he or she, the ability to, get to the to afford particular things like healthcare, to afford particular things that the wealthy can afford. It's not taking away, it's trying to balance things out.
Normally they get healthcare through their employer. They get healthcare through their employer.
You can call it trying to balance things out. But at the end of the day,
hold on, I was responding real quick to Dan.
You didn't let me respond earlier. Why don't you hold yourself to your own? Why don't you hold yourself to your own standards?
Dan,
I tried to do that earlier, and you didn't want to let me.
I want to respond to Dan really fast.
I went to do that earlier to respond to Dan, and you didn't let me. So why don't you hold yourself?
Let's just have the discussion. Stop it. Let's have the discussion. Let Shaq have his comment so we can continue forward.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to give you a comment so I was just trying to respond to what you said about the healthcare situation and affording to the employer, is that the employer itself, that even that tax money is still helping that balance for the employer and so on and so forth. It's just a balancing act. So that's where I disagree, is that it's taking away and attacking one group of people.
Public schools aren't taxable. Anyway, go ahead, Shaq.
Well, firstly, to Toby, when I went to respond to Dan, you didn't let me. Hold yourself to the same standard. You've made this argument before about social workers.
Just go ahead, Shaq.
Yeah.
You've made this same argument before about social workers, teachers, etc. Now, first of all, the average wage of teachers in the United States is closer to 60,000, not 30 or 40. Now, that equates to 90,000 in Australia, which actually means they get paid higher than the teachers here. So when it comes to the average wages that teachers are earning in the US, if you think that they should get paid more, I don't have an issue with you making that argument. That's not a problem. Maybe you think that they're underpaid. But to make the argument that their work is just as valuable to society as the work of people who, I don't know, let's say run hedge funds, are in private capital, are in the banking sector, etc. These are normally the people that get blamed, the big CEOs of big companies. Again, you can make that argument, but most people who are born in a Western country have the opportunity, regardless of their background, to be able to improve their lives. Now, there are exceptions to that, especially people with disabilities, obviously, but you can improve your background and you can work your way up. You can certainly do that, and you can choose to chart your path through life. And most immigrants who have come to the United States or come to Australia or come to other Western countries have come with nothing, and they've built their way up. Maybe they've started a restaurant, or they've started some sort of business, and they've tried to give their kids a better education and instilled a work ethic in those kids. Those kids have then worked their way up and become successful. So the idea that somehow they owe society something because of that success, I don't agree. And you can say it's about balancing all you like, but at the end of the day, it is taking away. You might think that balancing it is fair, okay, and that's fine. We can disagree about what's fair, what's not. But to try to use flowery language to cover up the fact that what you want to do is you want to take from one group of people in order to give to another group. That's ultimately what you are trying to do.
Redistribution of wealth.
And you're basing that on whether they're rich or not. It's very easy for the majority to gang up on a minority. And the top 1% is by definition a minority because there are only 1% of them.
And just really quickly, because I did not know that figure, so you were correct. So, and I will
give I'm correct. I do this for a living.
But I'm just going to tell you that the national average starting teacher salary is $38,617, while the average teacher salary in America is $58,950.
But again, this is the ridiculous argument that goes on in New Zealand right now, which is why the teachers are striking in New Zealand, because they feel as though they're being underpaid when their pay packet is $60,000 in their first year out of university. I mean, do you think somebody the first year after they finished a trade qualification that they're getting $100,000 a year? Generally speaking, no. Right? They have to work their way up. So what do you want? You want these people to $100,000 a year straight out of university in their first year as a teacher? Of course, their starting wage is going to be lower. But the average wage in the United States for teachers, I'm approximately rounding it up just a little bit, is about $60,000 a year.
That's what I just said. I said 58,000.
Yeah, he just gave you both figures, and both of us were correct in that situation. One being in the 30s, one being in the.
Yes, Toby, you're absolutely correct.
Jack, let me finish my point, and then let me finish my point. And you can take over. Okay, so just to point out, also, we cannot sit here and say somebody who's working 2 and 3 jobs as a teacher is not being underpaid. just because you feel that $60,000 is just perfect. Mark, while you're online, can you look up the average? What is the average poverty level across the U.S.? What's considered working poor?
Depends on dependence.
Yes, and I completely agree that it does depend. But the problem that we come into this, oh well, they're making $60,000, so they are well off. Again, we ignore the depends in that situation.
They're above the poverty level normally considered.
No, but what I'm saying is we ignore the comment, the depends, because we had just said the depends. Well, what is the poverty level? It depends. It fluctuates. So what people are able to
around
deal
20,000, 22, 25.
Yeah, and like you said, and I just looked it up, Dan, and like you said, it does depend on the amount of people and all along those lines, because I think that the household size for one person in the lower 48 states is 14,580. If it's two, it's 19,720. If we get up to a family of four, it's 30,000. If we get up to one of those big families, like a household size of 8, it then goes up to 50,560.
You guys.
The point I'm trying to make. Let me finish. Let me get the point out so I can finish this one point. You can take over.
For a while to get one point out, haven't you?
No, I haven't. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we can easily, when you're trying to say that one, redistribution of wealth, that's going to happen regardless. Taxes, no taxes, all the money is going to be redistributed regardless. So it just depends on if it's going to go to the top or if it's going to go to the bottom. If you take away taxes, then again, that teacher has taught every one of those people in the hedge fund members, but now is not giving back. That is one way you can look at it. That is one way you can look at it.
Hedge fund managers sending their kids to public school when the teacher's getting paid.
Well, and they taught them woke.
Do they go to ideals. A school? Only teachers teach at public schools?
The teachers.
Oh, they teach in private schools too.
Yeah, that's the point. The teachers go to different kind of schools. They're private schools and all those.
Come on now.
That's
but we've gone over, so I was going to wrap up. But the only other thing that I was going to say.
Sorry. Was I just made to wait for Jacoby to finish this same point that he's been
I
making?
I didn't even get to finish my point because you overtalked what I stated. I did not get to finish my point because you laughed and chuckled and became jovial because you assume that teachers only teach at public schools. So rather than just listen, you feel that you must overtalk. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on, stop, guys. Just get to the issue. Stop.
Yeah, get to the point.
I'm trying to. So again, redistribution of wealth. I'm not. I don't want to attack him, Dan, and I agree.
Any time today for this point. Any time today.
Just go.
So, yes, regardless how we want to think about it, redistribution happens either way. And yes, the individual that has all this money, like a Jeff Bezos, uses, as you pointed out, they have opportunities and they do use more of the system than the impoverished individual. So the point being is that
they do
to utilize.
The point being, Jacoby?
They use the system. Explain that. Really?
No reason to, because evidently what I'm trying to speak is just hilarious and jovial.
No, there's two systems. Okay, so you're talking about the system.
Yeah, because Dan, I'm laughing.
Real quick, Dan. I'll from this topic because it is just going to become one of those things that, as you said, we don't want to make it personal. We want to stick to the issues. As you see, the one in the corner right now wants to make it a personal thing. So listen,
instead of moving I agree that Jeff Bezos is able to take advantage of the financial opportunities provided by the system. So some of those systems are government, not regulated by the government as much as others. And it shouldn't be. If that's what free enterprise is all about. Now, should there be a distribution of wealth by the federal government? between the upper class and the lower class. By definition, there's going to be some. It's to the extent of which I think we disagree. I think somebody making $60,000 as a teacher with a family of 2 or 3 is making more than the poverty level wage. They still qualify for ACA because they're making less than $80,000 a year if they want to use ACA, or they can use their insurance through their school, which generally is better than what can be provided by ACA. There is no responsibility by the federal government to provide financial equality in this country. It's not one of the freedoms. Equal opportunity, yeah, not financial equivalence. That's earned. It's based on merit.
If I can jump in here on this teacher thing, where you originally started making the point and then you've moved on to something else. It's not about whether the teacher's contribution is being rightly valued. People know what the wages are there. Okay, if you don't like that, don't go into that field. Okay, like it's as simple as that. You try and do something else. Don't sit there and then complain because you're not happy with the job that you've got and what it pays when you know what that job pays before you go into the field. It's like celebrities that complain they get followed around by the paparazzi. If you don't want to be followed around by the paparazzi and have a loss of privacy, don't try to become famous and a celebrity in the first place. I mean, it's this constant whinging that goes on all the time. And sorry, Dan, you want to interrupt me? Dan, you go quickly, then I'll finish what I was going to say.
It's a choice to go into education. A lot of people are committed to educating children because of the love of children, and they feel a responsibility to do that. Should they be paid more? Probably. Although it's eight months of work and they get summers off, they can do other things. Everybody has to balance that out, make those decisions.
And you make choices. You make choices. And if you think they should get paid more, then the other question is, who should be responsible for paying them more? And there's only so much you can overburden and blame the rich for. Now, the example used was Jeff Bezos, that he uses more of government-provided resources or society resources than everybody else. Well, all those people that are buying products from him are also using those resources when they get delivered. All those people who, because of competition, are able to access goods and services from all over the world at a much cheaper price than they otherwise would have been able to access them, have also benefited from that. Should they be taxed for that benefit? And
plus the employs tens of thousands of people around the world.
And more importantly, Amazon, it's been a while since I've heard the Jeff Bezos Amazon story, but from what I can remember, he started that company up with around $300,000 of investment money and loans from his family members, predominantly his parents and family members and some friends. That's how he started off that business. Now, I remember when Amazon first, became listed and a few people told me about Amazon, I was like, what are they? An online bookstore? Who cares? I'll just use eBay. What's the difference? Well, why is Amazon going to be any better or worse than eBay? I'll just stick with what I'm doing. I didn't think that Amazon was ever going to be, a particularly big, massive company. Well, just like most things in tech, boy, wasn't I wrong, because Amazon is a substantially bigger company than eBay and most other tech companies. But it's not as though he is sitting on all of this money and you can just take some of the money and, it's all A-okay. Most of his net wealth, just like most of the billionaire class, if that's who we're talking about, most of that net wealth is stuck in stocks and investments. So if you want to get access to that, you have to get them to sell down their assets in order to give you the money that you want. And the tax system isn't even attempting to do that. What the tax system is doing attempting to do by having very high progressive rates of tax is it is actually hurting the aspirational classes. People who are entrepreneurs who have all of a sudden made a whole heap of money. Somebody who maybe came from nothing, was plodding along with the business and all of a sudden made $20 million in a year. That person's going to lose close to half of that in taxes. Now, maybe in the following years, that person might then have, after they get that horrendous tax bill, might then go and get lawyers and tax advisors and all the rest of it to try to stop having to pay such a high amount. And this is the problem. The tax system, the way it works, actually does the opposite of what everyone says, both on the left and the right, that they want the tax system to do. It doesn't redistribute wealth or stop dynastic wealth. It doesn't stop entrenched wealth that already exists from getting bigger. Okay? It doesn't do that. What it does is it hurts the ability of smaller people and smaller businesses to grow into bigger ones because it overburdens them with taxes and regulations. Now,
Agreed.
you don't have to agree with me on that, Chitovi and Mark. You don't have to agree with me. But with all due respect, I've studied this subject. You guys haven't. And you guys are just relying on the talking points of the political parties whose policies you ascribe to.
Well, Shaquille, first off, you don't. Hold on a second. First off, you don't know because I just said earlier that my mother ran one of the large foundations. I was involved.
Well, my mother's a nurse. It doesn't qualify me to give medical advice.
No, but I said it was a large financial foundation, and I said that I learned a lot from my mom from that foundation. I learned a lot from people when I was working with when I was working with BBX. I learned a lot from the people that were the entrepreneurs that you're talking about, and some of them actually agree with you. Now, some of them made some bad investments in my mind, but I think that those were bad investments when they decided to buy some of these digital properties, because I know some people that made some money, including some in that space of investment and some that were part of the Black business community and everything, but they made bad choices and everything. In my mind, like I said, that's my mind. But all I know, they can make a bunch of money off. They can make a bunch of money off of these things, but I haven't done enough research. Whether that is them buying offshore kind of properties that are non-existent, and y'all know the kind that I'm talking about.
What does that have to do with taxes?
I was just saying that I do not know about the taxes. That's why I was deferring to you and Dan. I think the Tuffy was as well. That's why we were asking questions and everything. So I think that we were learning.
Oh yeah, we'll see how much difference.
But I was just saying that I was agreeing with you. Actually, Shaquille, if you had heard me, I was actually agreeing with. I was hearing what you were saying about the work. I was actually agreeing with a lot of what you were saying and everything. And I was saying that I can see some of these arguments and everything. One of the other things that I was saying was I was going to bring into the conversation. And like I said, we're getting ready to run over because we've gone off almost 2 hours in this particular subject. And this is even where I was intended to go with World Edition, but it was a good conversation, even around the gambling and other things. But I had a very interesting conversation yesterday, Shaquille. It was with a young lady, to your point, that is part of the network, and she is into interior designing. She is frustrated because she's not having enough interior designing clients and all along those lines. So now she's looking at some other opportunities. Now, does she love her field? To your point, she loves interior designing. She loves doing the work in interior designing, but she's not making the money that she wants. So she's looking at the possibility of Lyft or Uber or maybe even this Aflac or a number of other companies to subsidize the money that she is making. Because some people, when they get into these poor classes, they try to find additional subsidies. I've said on this network several times that I work a multitude of jobs. Pod TV is just part of them because not one of them is making enough money for me to make the kind of money that I would like. So I have to do this kind of Jacoby called it a la carte.
Why is that though? To the point that I assume that you're trying to allude to and what Jacoby is saying. If teachers or any other person in society has to work 3 jobs to get, let's just go with, to get a total of $100,000 a year. Let's just go with that, okay? And after taxes, they've got a certain amount of money. Now, could I survive on $100,000 a year living in the places in the United States where I would like to live? I mean, I can survive in the US. I'm not sure that I would be very happy earning that. But that's why I would seek to get other qualifications or do other things to try to enhance what I'm going to earn. Now, as it stands right now, if I came to the US, even with the qualifications, credentials, and experience that I have, I could not go and be a stockbroker tomorrow like I used to be over here, because or a hedge fund manager domiciled in the US, because I would actually have to sit for a series of exams from the Securities and Exchange Commission and all sorts of other things that I'd have to do. And that might mean I'd have to go back to college and get another qualification in the US in order to make sure I can prove up that I know what I already know. Okay? But if that's where I thought the opportunities were, then that's a choice I would have to make. But I can't blame somebody else if I was to move to the US and decide not to do that and then say, well, somebody else has done that. They've made a whole lot more than I have. And here I am, poor me, on a lower amount of money. And it's not because I am not sympathetic to people who are poor or who are struggling or to those families that are going without. Of course I am. I just had a conversation with a family member of mine today about the cost of grocery prices here in Australia, and that person's on a fixed income. Right. And that person's really struggling. Okay. But I don't think that the government solution in Australia right now, where they're having an inquiry into what they're referring to as price gouging in grocery stores, I don't think that's going to result in a good outcome. And I've expressed that on the Edge Radio show that I think has been dual broadcast onto this network. Now, I know that's a popular position, but You have to be realistic about what government can do and what they can't. And you can't sit there, in my opinion, and look at every single thing that you think is unfair in relation to how wealth and resources are distributed across society, and then seek to fix what you consider to be unfair by taking it from the people at the top to just redistribute it to the people at the bottom. You just can't do it that way and also have free market ideals and freedom and liberty, which is what the US is supposed to stand for.
I disagree. The problem is that with the idea that we must take this, that we're taking away, again, it gets back to that balancing. Because if you take for example, going back to the teachers are a necessity in our society. So are so many others. But if we won't have teachers, what happens to our society? Then we begin to lose a ton of other things. Yeah, you can talk about private schools and pulling this and that and the other thing, but it's not going to work out for the majority of the society that does not have the same amount of wealth and we have that 1% club is still going to stay that 1% club. So there has to be some type of balance. There has to be some type of, okay, well, we need our taxes to help cover or balance this area. So these individuals, even if they are working poor, and it's very easy for us to sit here and say we can just up and change our job or position if we want to, even though it's not truthfully a thing that all of us here can do.
Well, I can.
One of those things. Okay, that's you.
Not
all of us.
Well, what, you can't change from your job into something else if you wanted to? There's something holding you back?
Just up and instantly, because I don't have the financial back or the finances backing me the same way that you do.
Hang on a second. I've changed jobs several times throughout my life, and I've gone back and forth into different things. But let me ask you three things about what you've just said.
Do we have the same finances? Do we have the same situations? So you're telling me that you know my situation.
Here we go. He's not going to. Okay, keep going.
Shaquille had 3 questions for you. What were the 3 questions?
Right. Let me just respond to three ways to things that you said. Firstly, I don't agree with you that if there wasn't more government funding of, for example, using teachers, that teachers would go away. I don't think that is borne out by history. And I think that that's what Dan was referring to when he talked about charities, because that's how this used to run. But even if it was true, who is going to be the determiner of what's balancing and what's not as to where those limited resources should go? Should it go to teachers? Should it go to doctors and nurses? Should it go to some other thing? Right? Who's going to determine that? But the more important thing that I want to just get back to is, even if you believe that you're justified and that let's call it diverting resources from one group to another is simply an attempt to balance the inequity of the society. Even if I was to agree with you on that, that is very flowery language for saying the same thing. You are taking it from somebody to give it to somebody else. You might think it's justified. You might think it's justified because of moral reasons or because of the benefit to the greater good or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you are still taking it from somebody. And the very unfortunate thing in the United States is when you look at who those somebodies are. For example, when it comes to college education and certain other types of things that are funded, some of the taxpayers are some of that, working poor middle class people that are above the thresholds where they are actually paying taxes. They're struggling, as you're saying, and they're trying to get other jobs, and yet they're forced to pay taxes to subsidize something that majority of middle-class kids are going to benefit from. And not only are they benefiting from it at the time, but they will then go on to earn far greater sums of money. Is there fairness in that? So when you say it's balancing, you are taking the money from somewhere in order to give it to somewhere else, and who gets to determine whether that's fair or not, or whether that's a fair balance or not?
Well, that's where the whole progressive tax rate comes into play. The one that you're arguing against and going, no, it has worked. It hasn't been working.
Jacoby, it hasn't been working. And I've explained on so many shows why it hasn't been. Here's the thing. You don't have to just take my word for it. You don't even have to take all the economists in the world who all say that progressive rates of tax, especially the way the US does it, doesn't work. All you actually have to look at is what is the total amount of tax revenue that the United States currently gets from having the tax system it has as a percentage of all the money earned in the US. At the moment, it's 25, or approximately. It's gone up a little bit because of the COVID and everything, but it's approximately 25%. The next country on that list, as far as low taxes are concerned, is Australia. At 27, it's gone up a little bit to 28% now. Okay? Both Australia and the US, Australia's now flattened its tax system, but Australia also had a progressive tax system that was very similar to the tax system that you have in the United States. Both Australia and the USA have the lowest percentage tax taking as a percentage of the GDP of the country, of any of the countries in the OECD. Now, the OECD average is 33%. So then you go and compare what the US is doing with progressive tax rates, and you compare it to other countries in the West that have less progressive tax rates, and ask the question, what percentage of the GDP of the country are those countries getting? Now, I've given you the example before about New Zealand. They've changed their tax system because of COVID, but prior to that, if you compared Australia's tax system to New Zealand's, Australia's at 27%, New Zealand's at 30%. Now, I'm not sure that New Zealand's tax system would work in the US because you've got state and federal taxes a little bit different. But the point is that nowhere can you see progressive tax rates in the US working the way that people want them to work. Now, the idea, if I understand everybody correctly, the idea that they're trying to achieve is that the wealthiest people will contribute proportionally more into the tax system. Whilst that is somewhat true, two people in very similar economic positions in the US who are both wealthy may be contributing to completely different amounts. And secondly, because it is a progressive rate of tax on income, what it means is that very wealthy people can change how they're earning money so it's not income, and so they pay effectively a much lower tax rate. What would be a better system, and this is supported by the majority of economists on the political left and the right, what would be a more efficient system in the United States would be to flatten the system, broaden it across a much wider group of people across all income classes, and then do something to make the benefit system regressive. The fact that you don't want to consider that is, I believe, where the problem is, because what the United States has done is they've put themselves in a position where any suggestion that the top rates of tax should be decreased is opposed for giving the rich a tax break. But you're not really giving the rich a tax break because they're not paying it anyway. So if you lower that in order to increase it elsewhere, you would get a better result. And that's just borne out by tax theory across the world.
So
Just 1 second. I'll just say this last thing. If the US is so confident, though, that its tax system, which currently produces the lowest amount of tax revenue across the OECD, is such a good idea, why doesn't it promote that as foreign policy when it goes to other countries and is at war with them or whatever? Why doesn't it promote that around the Western world and say, hey, look how amazing our tax system is? If it's working according to you, it's working so well.
So Australia has a higher poverty rate than the US currently. Just to point that out. But
the relevance of that was?
Huh?
What the relevance of that was?
Just because you said the flat tax rate is working out so well, so that means if the progressive tax rate has a lower poverty rate, wouldn't that be a better thing?
That makes absolutely no sense to Toby at all.
If the progressive tax rate has
hang on. So what you're saying is that the progressive rate of tax is what affects the rate of poverty, not how much money.
The point that I did want to make real quick is one key element that you said, but you kind of glossed over it. You said that the rich aren't even paying it. And we have the lowest amount of taxes paid. So if the rich actually paid, how much more would our taxes, the tax revenue be?
Toby, but they can't pay based on what is being asked of them. It would be like if I moved to the United States
in the
tomorrow.
Progressive tax rate, they can't pay what they're being asked.
Just as an example, let's say that I was Do you want to hear it or not?
Just to add on to it, is it at 30-some%? Can you add that in as well? 37%?
If you just want to browbeat me into taking your position, Jatovi,
I'm not. I'm asking you questions.
And I'm trying to answer it. So do you want me to answer it or not? Do you want me to answer your question or not?
Okay, go for it.
If I personally was to move to the United States tomorrow and have a green card, right? It'd be terrible for me because I'd have to change a few things. But let's just say that instantly tomorrow I moved to the US and I had a green card, which therefore makes me taxable in the US on my entire worldwide income. Okay? All I would have to do is stop paying myself a wage for my companies. That's it. All I'm going to do. Now, I'm not going to tell you how much I earn. It's substantially less than what people try to make out on these shows. But I would be in the top percentile, whatever percentage it is. It's not going to be the top 1 necessarily, but I'd be certainly up in that top 10% of income earners in the US based on where the averages are right now. So I'd be paying nothing. Zero. Somebody else in the US who was building up and had had the same journey that I've had over the last handful of years, where I've made a lot of money, that person would lose half. That, in the first place, I don't think is fair. But secondly, and more importantly, when you say if the wealthy were to pay it, there'd be more money. No, because you're charging them tax on their income. Okay? There are very few people in the world. In fact, I don't think there is anybody in the world who, for example, gets paid $500 million a year. Okay? People don't earn money like that. Nobody gets paid a wage. They clock in and clock out, do a 9-to-5 job and get paid $500 million. But there are people that will earn $500 million because the value of their investments have gone up. So what does the solution that's get offered? Well, let's just put an investment tax on, or let's tax unrealized capital gains. All of these types of things don't work. It's been tried elsewhere. It hasn't worked. Why is the US so against trying to do things that its peer group have tried that have actually worked and resulted in far higher government revenue?
But again, if the individuals that you even use yourself as an example aren't paying into the tax and paying the taxes, but the individual trying to build up isn't it the individuals who aren't paying causing the problem?
No, because the individuals that aren't paying because their income, they're not earning an income for it to be taxable on. Warren Buffett only pays himself, I can't remember how much it is, 100 grand or 200 grand a year or something, right? So the amount of income tax he pays is basically nothing because all of his wealth is generated from his internal holdings and his investments.
I understand that. But what I'm saying to you is that you're saying individual, and this goes back to even you saying taking from one and giving to the other. This individual has to pay and is having it taken away.
Yes.
This individual is not paying and given to him.
You've belabored this point for quite a while. What is the thing? Obviously, I'm not giving you an answer that you want. So what answer do you want from it?
But again, if this rich person is so when I put in a poor person here,
hold on a second. Let me just interject because we've gone way over and everything. But it sounds to me like, if I'm hearing you correctly, Jatovi, that you're asking for more of the Robin Hood kind of system and everything, which is to get some of the rich to pay a greater share because they have a greater share to pay, and all along those lines. And that's kind of like that Robin Hood principle and everything along those lines. It's kind of like getting the rich to pay more share and give back to the poor. One thing I was going to ask Shaquille, I don't know what his thoughts are around this and everything, but there is and this is, you would call this changing the goalpost, but I think it's still part of the same conversation. There is a amount of set-asides that go to a certain amount of people and all along those lines. Like we have Section 8 housing and things along those lines. So I'm just wondering, in your mind, is that all right? Because there are people, even in our housing situations, that are given a certain amount of housing because of their income level and because they can't necessarily afford the fancy houses. So there is, even in the apartment complexes, I know there's some nice apartment complexes there that they set aside a certain amount of the apartments to be paid at a lower rate because they know that certain people, whether it's the artistic class or other classes, can't afford the market rate and everything. So I'm just wondering if these kind of programs are right in your mind. And I don't know the answer, Shaquille. I'm just saying, but I've seen these kind of programs.
but once again, I'm just going to say it's not the objective of the program that I have a problem with. It's the program itself not achieving that objective very well or very efficiently. The idea that people should be able to have reasonable housing is perfectly reasonable. I have no objection to that, just like I have no objection to the idea that everybody should be forced to contribute to a healthcare system, as is done in most other countries outside the US, most other Western countries, so that anybody, regardless of their economic position, can seek healthcare and can get the treatment that they need. Okay, and not the minimum acceptable amount of treatment, but they can actually access the treatment that they need, okay, at the highest level that can be provided to them, right? So I have no problems with these objectives. It's how you achieve them, okay? If the housing issue is what you're saying, there certain apartments are set aside. They're not set aside because of the altruism of property developers in the United States. They're set aside because of tax breaks that those property developers are getting, right? Then the government comes in and then subsidizes it even further. Why not just give them the money and tax the property developer a little bit more if that's what you wanted to do, right? Wouldn't that be a more efficient system rather than having all of the government departments now that are going to be involved in this transaction? And then that property developer who's now got the tax break then gets complained about because he or she is not contributing enough to the system, and look at how low the effective tax rate is. These are the same reason why when you guys in America decided to introduce the alternative minimum tax, okay? And it sounds good, except for a lot of the reason why the tax rates were so low on some of the wealthy was because they were investing in tax-advantaged investments. For example, municipal and state bonds, which are not taxable. They did that because of the advantage that they would get. The benefit to the government was that they got to pay a lower rate because it wasn't taxable. So what does the federal government then decide to do, and everyone decide to do? Well, look at how little they're actually paying in taxes. So therefore, we're going to tax them a minimum amount. You can't have it both ways. You can't say to people, we're going to have this really high progressive rate of taxes, but then that's going to enable us to give you tax breaks to invest in all these other things that we want you to invest your money in. And then when you invest your money into those things and you reduce the amount that you've got to pay in tax, then we're going to complain that you're not contributing enough. And what happens is those people that don't want to play all of those games end up having to pay a much higher amount of their income than people who know the system a little bit better, that have lawyers and people that can write grant applications, that can go through, find out all the loopholes, find out all the ways that they can legally reduce their taxes. This is where the problem lies. And once again, Jatovi, if what you want to do, and Mark, if what you want to do is to have the wealthy contribute more, fine. There are very few people that disagree with that. The problem is, and the only thing that I'm saying here, is that progressive taxes and inheritance taxes or estate taxes, whatever you want to call them, are a very inefficient and poor way of doing that. And that is borne out by the evidence that other countries don't do it and have a much higher percentage of the GDP taken in taxes. Where's the argument here?
Well, my argument comes from what you had said, is that, and it's not really even that, pay more or whatever. It's just to pay it all. Because
then tax them differently.
It sounded as if, okay, this person pays nothing. This person pays a lot. Take from this, give to them. This person, if they're poor, it's their fault. This person, if they're rich, well, we need to change everything so they're not having to pay. So it takes the blame. It's just interesting, the argument around that, depending on if this person is rich, then we shouldn't blame them. We should blame the government. But if this person's poor, we should blame them. They should get another job. That's the problem of the whole argument.
But this is why I made the statement earlier, and I tried to interject, because you were going to bring two different topics in, and you didn't want to let me interject, and that's what you've done, okay? Because on the one hand, there's taxes, and what is the most likely tax system that's going to give us the outcome that the majority of people want to have, right? What is the best way to structure the tax system to create that? That's one argument. The other argument is whether or not the government or society at large owes an obligation to certain groups of people. Now, in most Western countries, none of us would like to live in a country where the poor are just left to starve and rot on the side of the road. Okay, nobody really wants to see that sort of country. There are countries like that you can go and live in. Most people don't want to live there. They try to get out of there. Okay, nobody, generally, there's very few people in society that want to see a child who has broken his or her leg be denied medical care. Right, that's not something that we want to see in our countries. So that comes at a cost. But then when you bring up an issue such as the low levels of wages in social workers and in teachers, etc., and use that as an argument for why taxes should go up on the rich, what I'm saying to you is, first of all, you should make sure the tax system is a fair and reasonable one for everybody. Then you can talk about where the benefits are. And I don't think it is fair to say that because somebody is a social worker and earns substantially less money than somebody else, that person should have their wages increased artificially by government taxes, which has been taken from another person, because that person has chosen to go into a field that they love and are passionate about, but are aware that there are low wages in.
Well, we can actually continue this discussion on a future show. We've had a very robust conversation. I've actually enjoyed it and everything. I was actually going to tell Jacoby that in this case, there can be something that y'all, both you, Shaquille, and Jacoby can agree on and everything, because actually Jacoby earlier showed his new puppy, and I know that Shaq is involved in the dog world as well. So in that space, they can have that comparison that is a similarity, and all along those lines, they both have a love of dogs, because Jacoby just got a new puppy, and I know that you are involved in the dog world as well.
I wish you didn't say that, Mark, because you're well aware I'm a cat person, not a dog person. I've not done that many times before. I don't have any pet dogs.
No, but you might have cats, but you were involved in the dog business. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, raising dogs. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you for the effort.
Yeah, that was just making a common comparison that y'all have that in common and everything. But maybe you like cats. I used to have a cat myself, so I might share the cat love with you as well. But yeah, Jacoby has that dog that one that he's been talking to this whole time about having the conversation with you as well. So we're going to get on out of here, but maybe we'll have some more of this conversation later on. I was actually going to get to the notion of Ukraine. That's actually what I was going to ask Sasha earlier, because I was wondering what he thought of this conversation around the leadership and the leadership conflicts that are going on in Ukraine, and maybe we'll bring that up on tomorrow, because that's one of the things that I said earlier that I never get a chance to ask Sasha, but hopefully I get a chance to ask him tomorrow, because definitely there seems to be some dissension even in the ranks of Ukrainian government.
Well, let me just ask one last question to Jacoby before you log off, Mark.
Yes,
Jacoby, if you think that teachers should be entitled to more pay and that should come from tax dollars taken from the wealthy, wouldn't it be an even greater argument that those tax dollars should go to the poor before they go to the teachers?
A greater argument that the teachers shouldn't be paid more, the poor should just be given money.
That's not what I said.
Understand the question.
If you believe that teachers and social workers are underpaid and their income should be increased by receiving tax dollars taken from the rich, don't you think by that argument that rather than giving the money to teachers and social workers, the money would be better spent giving it to the poor?
No.
So the poor should stay where they are, but the teachers and social workers should go up.
No. You're pitting.
Because you've got a finite amount of money.
Let me finish.
You're going to put it.
Let me finish. One, you're pitting individuals against each other. And I do think that the benefits that we get from the actual investment in education outweighs everything else. So those who are impoverished, if we were to give more money to the teachers, that means we have more schools, we have more resources available. Therefore, for those individuals that do not have and actually can actually,
if you had a limited amount of money to give.
Finish.
You've said it. You answered my question. You've answered my question.
No, Shaq. This is why we get issues. This is why we get issues. You got to let me finish just as I let you finish. So, by giving it to teachers and social workers and the other individuals that can help the poor, because many of them are working poor, that one gives opportunities to those impoverished, that educates and gives more advanced knowledge for those who are impoverished. There's actually a gentleman that I am legitimately working with who actually
you're clearly now just repeating the point and then digressing. Like you've just repeated the same point and then
I'm trying
digressed.
to explain an
I
example.
don't need a lengthy explanation.
You
I
do
don't
the
need
same thing, and
explanation.
then I let you go. Shaq,
Give me an example. Go with the example, Shaquille. I mean,
Wow.
But you're using
So
an
let me
example.
point
What
out
you're doing is you're
that
using an
the way,
example to
oh
justify.
gosh, Shaq, I
your
just
thing,
wanted to finish,
right?
and you won't let me finish.
Oh, go for it,
No.
Toby. Just go for it. There's no time limit. Go
I
for
was
it.
just
Buddy.
trying to finish.
Yeah, go. No problem.
We've spent more time arguing "let me finish" than letting me finish. So again, for example, there is a person that got an opportunity that I am legitimately working with who is homeless and who is taking advantage of some educational opportunities because of the advancements that he was able to achieve. So therefore, he's improving his life based off of the opportunities that were allotted to him based on just having more opportunities with education. So by giving the money to teachers and social workers and then being able to reach out to more individuals in poverty, that helps out the poverty level even more than just, hey, take some money. Because as we've discussed on this show, financial literacy is important. Just giving money to individuals who've never had money, that is not holding people accountable, and that causes a problem with financial literacy.
Shaquille, did you have something you were going to say? Otherwise, I'm going to hit
Oh, no. First of all, thank you to Toby. The way that you eloquently repeated the point, justified the point, gave an example to justify the point, and then repeat the point again. Thank you very much. Because if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have actually understood the point at the time that I had tried to interject to respond to the original point that you'd made. Now, whilst you may be very passionate about teachers and social workers, whether they do good or bad is not the issue at hand here. It's about the allocation of resources, which is the question I'm asking you. So whatever examples you want to use as to why teachers are your preferred group is irrelevant to the question I'm asking you. Now, to come back to the point, if you have limited resources and you have a choice between allocating between one group or another, this is not pitting those two groups against each other. You have a certain finite amount of resources and you have a choice to make as to where to allocate them. You've talked before about balancing. Right, the sounds of what you're saying, because poor people are going to benefit from education and social work, it's perfectly reasonable for the money to be allocated to people that are already earning on average $60,000 a year, rather than allocate to people who are homeless, living in tents that don't have enough to eat and have poor sanitary conditions. I personally don't think that would be a very good allocation of the resources. So again, the question that is going to come up then is, if you do in fact increase the amount of government resources that you have, who gets to determine where those resources are spent? It's not going to be you, obviously, or me or anybody else. It's going to be a decision made by the government, by the politicians. So this is the problem with these sorts of systems in the first place, is that the money is rarely going to where it should. There's a lot of bureaucratic expenditure that comes into play, and ultimately a lot of money is being taken from one group and being attempted to be diverted to another, and it goes missing along the way. But as I said, who should be the determiner of what's ethically and morally okay and what's not?
Yes, it goes to Congress to figure all that out. And again, I had answered your question based on, if it were me in that position, it was based on what's more beneficial to society and what could help out society in a better way. And we on this program have talked multiple times about how people are not financially literate in a lot of ways, and based on what I see and I understand, and these are just my opinions, nothing against yours, just giving money to an individual who's never had money before isn't really something that's going to benefit society in the most. And based on our histrionics and everything that teachers touch, it is proven, based on everything society's built on, that the more teachers there are, the more opportunities and the more growth and the more educated society we have. Just so that's where my logic was.
Why the money should go to teachers.
But just to answer,
you're justifying. You're again doing the same thing. You're justifying why the money should go to teachers. We could make the same argument for why the money should go to nurses. That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is who should get to determine it. You've said Congress, but we know that Congress doesn't do this very efficiently.
Shaq, Congress makes that decision currently. That's where the taxes are.
That's right, and they're doing a bad job of it, which has been complained about by the other side.
You asked me two particular individuals, and I didn't say nurses because that wasn't an option.
Look, you're obviously. I think you're
said
I think you know what? You're going to skirt around the issues. I've played this game with you before. I'm not going to play it any further with you tonight.
He answered your question, Shaquille. He went with the teachers. He went with the teachers, and as opposed to the poor person. So I thought he answered your question. He went with the teachers instead of the poor person because the teacher has more influence on society. If I heard you right, Jacoby, because
he gave me. Do you give it to A or do you give it to B? He didn't say, and then comes around. Well, you didn't say D. Well, that wasn't an option on the test. It's either true or false, A or B. And I said A. Okay, we'll go with A. And why did you decide that? That's why I decided it. Well, you know who decides it in reality? Well, Congress does. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. That was just like, hey, I want to argue with you for the sake of arguing.
But like I said, we're going to end this show right now and everything. But there's a number of other things, including the housing issue, and I do agree with both of you.
Just for the audience sake, the reason why I just drop off and say things like I've said is because I have spent many hours backstage with Jacoby discussing these issues.
Mark, go ahead and close the show. This is a pity party against Shaq trying to show his grievances. Just go ahead and close the show. I'll see you tomorrow, Mark. You can call me.
That's great. You got it. Right. Now, he knows exactly the point. He knows exactly the point that I'm trying to make. He knows exactly what I'm asking him. And what he's doing is playing games and trying to act as though he's totally confused by the question. Now, I've asked this sort of question and reworded the questions on previous shows many times. Okay.
But Shaquille.
Mark, I'm speaking to the audience, not to you. So whatever audience is left, I'm just simply not interested in playing these sorts of games with Jacoby, and that's why I left, and that's why I'm leaving.
Okay, well,
like I say something you can, Mark, but I'm already leaving.
Well, we're going to end the show anyway. I was just going to ask. I thought that the question was asked and answered, but that's just my opinion.
Well, that's great. That's great, Mark, because you can join Jacoby then as somebody who, in my opinion, knows exactly the points that I'm trying to make and knows exactly what I'm asking. And the reason why I know that you guys know that is because of the sheer amount of time that I have spent explaining to you in excruciating detail, bringing up stats for other countries, etc., to try and show you the differences between different things. You know exactly the points that I'm making, and you are choosing. I don't know for the sake of just not trying to acknowledge any points that I make.
Shaquille, I acknowledge all your points. I actually go back and watch the show. I actually said several times that Shaquille is right. I said several times during the show that Shaquille is right.
I hope you have a great day, my friend. I'm not interested in playing the game.
Like I said several times during the show that Shaquille was right, and I acknowledge things that I thought he was right at, and I also acknowledge things that I do not have a knowledge of and everything. So I learned a lot from Shaquille, and I think others learned a lot from Shaquille as well as Nick and others on the network. But we do have an investment show at 1:00, so that'll be with Sasha Starr, and we'll see what kind of conversations come around in that as well.